It's over, Ethan. The words echoed in the sterile air of our San Francisco condo, colder than the bay fog outside. My wife, Amelia, stood by the door, suitcase in hand. Her face, which I'd adored for 15 years, was a mask of chilling finality. "I'm leaving you for David." My stomach plunged. David, her charismatic, overconfident boss. She delivered the final blow without flinching. "He's an upgrade, Ethan. He's building an empire, while you just move other people's money around." She thought she was trading up for a visionary. She had no idea David's entire empire was being built with my money. The anonymous angel investor she couldn't wait to meet was the very man she was abandoning. The click of the lock was a gunshot in the silence. I'd met David Chen exactly once, 6 months ago, when he pitched his AI startup, Aura Connect. He had the slick confidence of a man who'd never known failure, wearing a designer hoodie and speaking in a torrent of tech bro buzzwords. The idea was brilliant. The man, a walking red flag. But my firm, Stonebridge Holdings, bets on revolutionary ideas, not personalities. From an anonymous account, I wired the $5 million that gave his dream life. That money bought his company, his downtown office, and, it turned out, my wife. Amelia had joined his team 3 months later, completely mesmerized. Soon our dinners became lectures on David's genius. She saw a self-made visionary, an empire builder. I saw a puppet whose strings I held. Her upgrade was a man living on my dime in a reality I had bankrolled from the very beginning. And he, like her, had absolutely no idea. The board meeting he was so excited about next month? The one to impress his mysterious investor? I'd just moved it up on the calendar. Staring at the empty space where her suitcase had been, my mind drifted back. 15 years isn't a footnote, it's a lifetime. We met when I was just a junior analyst at Stonebridge, and she was a brilliant, fiery marketing assistant, with dreams bigger than her tiny apartment. We built our life from scratch, fueled by cheap takeout, and a shared belief that we were an unstoppable team. "You and me against the world, Vance," she'd whisper, tracing the city lights from our first balcony. Our world was solid. I climbed the ladder at Stonebridge, not by being the loudest man in the room, but by being the smartest. My strength was never in flashy presentations. It was in seeing the patterns others missed, in quiet, calculated risks. I operate from the shadows. It's my professional signature. Anonymity protects the investment from ego, both mine and the founders. I back the vision, not the visionary. Amelia used to admire that. She called it my superpower. Then came Aura Connect. She was feeling stagnant at her old firm, and I saw the listing at David's startup. I knew it was a risk, but I encouraged her. "It sounds like the kind of challenge you'd love," I'd said, a bitter irony in my own words. I wanted her to be happy, to feel that fire again. I never imagined that fire would be used to burn our life to the ground. The change was gradual, then sudden. Our dinners became monologues about David's latest breakthrough. "David secured a new patent today," she'd say, her eyes gleaming. "He's building something that will last forever." My work became a point of contempt. One night, looking over a deal memo, I heard her sigh from the doorway. "All those numbers. It's so abstract, Ethan. It's not like what David does. He's in the trenches, creating." The seed of her upgrade argument had been planted long before she said the words. She forgot that the abstract numbers I managed were the very soil from which David's company grew. She forgot the nights I spent mentoring young founders, turning their chaotic energy into viable businesses. She saw a spreadsheet. She couldn't see the empires one built from them. My quiet strength, once a superpower, had become a liability in her eyes. She mistook my silence for inaction, my strategy for passivity. Standing in the deafening silence of our condo, the memories didn't bring tears. They brought clarity. She hadn't just left me. She had fundamentally misunderstood the man she'd spent 15 years with. She wanted a king for her new kingdom, blind to the fact that she just abandoned the God who'd created the world she was so desperate to enter. The board meeting wasn't just business anymore. It was a performance review, and I was about to give David Chen and my wife the feedback of a lifetime. The 2 weeks leading up to the board meeting were a masterclass in modern betrayal. My pain quickly calcified into cold, methodical focus. I didn't unplug or retreat, I observed. My anonymity was my watchtower. Amelia's social media, once a curated collection of our life together, hikes in Muir Woods, wine tasting in Napa, became a shrine to David Chen. There they were, clinking champagne glasses in his gleaming office, the Aura Connect logo glowing behind them like a halo. Her caption, "So proud to be on this journey with a true visionary. We're not just building a company, we're building the future." A friend of hers commented, "You look so happy." "An absolute upgrade," Amelia replied with a single, smug heart emoji. Upgrade. The word was a branding exercise for her new life. David, meanwhile, was playing the part of the tech mogul to perfection. He was featured in a minor tech blog, spouting my own talking points from our initial pitch meeting as if they were divine inspiration. He spoke of his instinct and relentless drive, never once mentioning the $5 million foundation his instincts were built upon. He was a great performer. I had to give him that. He was selling a story, and my wife had been his first and most devoted customer. The day the divorce papers arrived via courier, Amelia called. Her voice was syrupy with faux pity. "Ethan, did you get them?" Quote, "I did," I said, my tone flat, emotionless. "Good. I want this to be as painless as possible. I really do hope you're okay." "I'm managing," I said, staring at the Aura Connect expense reports I'd just had delivered to my home office. "That's good to hear," she said, a hint of relief in her voice. Then, the inevitable pivot. "Things are just incredible here. David is closing a huge partnership. He's taking the whole executive team to Monaco next month to celebrate and meet with European investors." She paused, letting the weight of her new, glamorous life hang in the air between us. "It's just on another level, you know." "I'm sure it is," I said. My eyes scanned a line item on the report. "Travel and entertainment. MC Express 001, flights to Monaco, 2 first-class tickets, non-refundable. Booked 3 days after she left me. My $5 million at work. Anyway," she sighed, her performance concluding, "I'll have movers contact you about my things." She hung up before I could reply. I kept scrolling. It wasn't just the flights. It was a $20,000 charge for a table at a charity gala David listed as, quote, networking, a 5-figure deposit on a 2-year lease for a Porsche Taycan categorized as a, quote, company vehicle, and a series of lavish dinners for 2 at San Francisco's most expensive restaurants, all logged under client acquisition. The client he was acquiring was my wife. The empire he was building was a house of cards financed by my money and her affair. He wasn't a visionary. He was a thief, hiding his personal expenses in plain sight, arrogantly assuming his anonymous benefactor was too distant or too stupid to notice. He mistook my silence for absence. I highlighted the Monaco flights, the Porsche lease, and a particularly egregious $8,000 charge from a luxury jeweler coded as corporate gifting. I saved the file as board_meeting_exhibit_A. Amelia thought she was leaving a banker for a king. She didn't realize she'd aligned herself with a court jester who was robbing the treasury. The performance review was ready, and the kingmaker was about to take the stage. I closed the laptop, the glow of Exhibit A fading from the screen. There was no rage, no primal scream trapped in my chest. Just a profound, chilling quiet. The kind of quiet that precedes a tectonic shift. My grief had burned away, leaving behind the cold, hard clarity of my resolve. This was never about winning Amelia back. She was collateral damage in her own ambition. This was about correcting a market error. David Chen was a bad investment, a liability disguised as a visionary, and it was time to write him off the books. My job was to protect capital, and he had treated my firm's money, my money, like his personal slush fund. The next morning, I made one phone call. Marcus Thorne, my personal lawyer, and the only other board member of Aura Connect, answered on the first ring. He was the public-facing representative for the anonymous investor, the grizzled veteran I'd installed, to keep an eye on things precisely for moments like this. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady, devoid of the turmoil from the past weeks. "The 9 a.m. with Chen, I'll be attending." A significant pause on the line. Marcus knew I hadn't attended a portfolio company's board meeting in person in over 5 years. "In person?" "In person," I confirmed. "And I want a projector and a screen ready. I'm adding a non-negotiable item to the agenda. A full line-by-line audit of all executive spending since inception." "Consider it done," he said, the understanding clear in his tone. He didn't ask why. He knew my methods. My physical presence meant the game was over. 2 days before the meeting, my phone buzzed. A text from Amelia. "Can my friend pick up my last few boxes on Wednesday morning? Say, 9:30? Nimes Wednesday." The day of the meeting. She was coordinating the disposal of her old life while preparing to celebrate her new one just a few floors up in David's office. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "That time is fine, asterisk," I typed back. "Dash, I won't be here." Her reply was instant, dripping with condescension. "Nas, Cordnon das." Big day at Stonebridge? Moving money around? I looked at the text for a long moment, the screen illuminating my impassive face. "Something like that. Asterisk." I replied. "I'm liquidating a poorly performing asset." She didn't respond. The silence was more satisfying than any argument we ever had. The morning of the board meeting, I didn't choose a power suit. I chose the same simple, dark gray suit I wore to every major deal closing. It was my uniform for quiet, definitive endings. As I knotted my tie, I caught my reflection in the mirror. There were no dark circles under my eyes, no hint of the man whose world had imploded weeks ago. I looked calm, composed. I looked exactly like what I was, a man on his way to work, a man whose only job today was to protect his investment. Amelia thought she was escaping a predictable life with a spreadsheet jockey. She and David were walking into a kingdom they thought was theirs, completely unaware that the man who owned the land, the castle, and the very air they breathed was about to foreclose. I drove my 7-year-old sedan, a deliberate choice. A stark contrast to the Porsche Taycan David was flaunting as a company car. Crossing the Bay Bridge, the San Francisco skyline didn't inspire awe. It looked like a portfolio of assets, some stable, some volatile, some like Aura Connect, toxic. Amelia had once called this view our infinity pool of dreams. Now all I saw were towers of glass and steel, monuments to ambition. David's ambition was a cheap replica, a sandcastle built too close to the tide. I parked in a public garage 3 blocks away and walked. The crisp morning air did nothing to alter the cold stillness inside me. The Aura Connect headquarters was in a new, gleaming tower that screamed post-IPO startup. The lobby was a cathedral of minimalist design, with a massive digital screen flashing the company's logo, a pulsing, ethereal circle of light. David's, Aura. It was supposed to represent connection. For me, it was a 0. Ethan Vance, for the 9 a.m. board meeting. I told the receptionist, who barely looked up. She handed me a visitor's pass. The flimsy plastic clip felt absurd. I was a visitor in the house I had built. The anonymity was a tactical advantage, a cloak of invisibility. As the elevator ascended with silent speed, I didn't feel a surge of adrenaline. I felt like a surgeon approaching an operating table. The procedure was complex, but the diagnosis was clear. The cancer had to be cut out. The elevator doors opened onto the 48th floor. The view was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic vista of the city and the bay. It was a workspace designed to impress, to project success and inevitability. Young, bright-eyed employees typed on laptops at standing desks or laughed over coffee in a kitchen stocked with every imaginable artisan snack. This was the culture my $5 million had bought. Kombucha on tap and a pervasive, unearned sense of victory. I walked the perimeter, my visitor's pass granting me silent passage. I was looking for one thing, and then I saw it. A glass-walled corner office, the best view on the floor, second only to David's. On the door, a clean silver plaque read, Amelia Sterling, VP of Marketing, Sterling. Her maiden name. She had already erased me. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a complete system restore, deleting every file with the name Vance on it. Through the glass, I could see her desk. It was neat, organized. And in a silver frame, placed for anyone walking by to see, was the photo from her social media post. Her and David, beaming, their heads close together. A monument to her upgrade. My heart didn't ache. It flatlined. The last flicker of sentiment I might have held for the woman I'd loved was extinguished by that nameplate. She wasn't my Amelia anymore. She was Amelia Sterling, a willing co-conspirator in a fraudulent enterprise. I continued to the boardroom. The heavy oak door was slightly ajar, and David's voice boomed from within, dripping with the bravado I remembered from his pitch. And that's just the beginning. Marcus will tell you, our angel is thrilled with the progress. The Monaco trip is about locking down our European expansion. We are on a rocket ship, gentlemen. I pushed the door open. The room fell silent. David, standing at the head of a long marble table, stopped mid-sentence. He was flanked by two other board members. Men I knew from their resumes were old cronies of his, chosen for their loyalty, not their insight. My lawyer, Marcus Thorne, sat at the far end, his expression unreadable. David looked me up and down, a flicker of irritation on his face. He saw a man in a simple gray suit who didn't belong. He saw a nobody. "Sorry, mate, can I help you?" he asked, his tone laced with condescension. "If you're looking for coffee, it's down the hall to the left." Marcus cleared his throat. "David," he said, his voice cutting through the air. "This is Ethan Vance. He's with me." David's smile tightened. He recalibrated, shifting from dismissal to slick corporate welcome. He clearly assumed I was a junior analyst from the investor's family office, sent to take notes. "Ethan, great to finally meet you. David Chen." He extended a hand, his grip firm, his watch expensive. "Always good to put a face to the team. You work closely with our benefactor, I take it?" I ignored his outstretched hand. "Something like that," I said, my voice even. I walked past him and took the empty chair at the head of the table, his chair, the symbolic center of power. I placed my leather satchel on the table and clicked it open. David's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of confusion and dawning offense. He looked at Marcus, who simply gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod in my direction. The two other board members exchanged nervous glances. The rocket ship had just hit an unexpected patch of turbulence. The air in the room grew thick, heavy, with unspoken questions. David remained standing, his authority suddenly evaporating. He was a king in his throne room, just realizing the man who'd been introduced as a stable boy was now sitting on his throne. Right on cue, the boardroom door swung open again. "So sorry I'm late." Amelia's voice was bright, confident. She strode in, holding a tablet, her face lit with the triumphant glow of someone who believed they had already won. "David, I have the final deck for the Monaco presentation." Her voice died in her throat. She stopped dead, her eyes locked on mine. She saw me, sitting in David's chair at the head of the table, the man she'd called predictable, the spreadsheet jockey she'd left behind, the man who wasn't supposed to be here, the man who was just moving money around. Her? Upgrade? Looked at her, then back at me, a frantic, desperate confusion dawning on his face. The color drained from hers. In that single, shattering moment of recognition, She understood. The god had finally entered his kingdom, and he was not pleased. The air in the room became a vacuum, sucking the life and color from Amelia's face. Her triumphant smile dissolved into a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. Her tablet slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the marble floor with a sound that was unnervingly loud in the dead silence. Her eyes, wide with horror, darted from me to David, then back to me, the terrible equation solving itself behind them. David, utterly lost, took a step towards her. "Amelia? What's wrong? Do you know this guy?" I leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. I looked at David, my expression unreadable. She does. I turned my attention to Marcus. "Marcus, the projector, please." As Marcus dimmed the lights and a brilliant white rectangle appeared on the wall, David finally found his voice, a frantic blend of outrage and confusion. "Hold on. Who the hell are you? You can't just walk in here and take over my board meeting." "Your board meeting?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Your company? Your money?" I let the questions hang in the air. I swiveled my chair to face him fully. "You asked if I worked closely with your benefactor. Let's clear that up. The anonymous entity that funded Aura Connect is a sole proprietor LLC. It's a holding company." I paused, letting him process. "A subsidiary of my firm, Stonebridge Holdings." David stared, his mouth slightly agape. The swagger was gone, replaced by a dawning, sickening dread. I looked at him, my gaze unwavering. "My name is Ethan Vance, and it's my money you've been playing with." His face went white. Beside him, Amelia made a small, strangled sound, one hand flying to her mouth. She looked like she was going to be sick. "Now," I said, turning back to the screen and clicking a key on my laptop. "The agenda. Let's talk about executive spending." The first slide appeared. It was the expense report. My voice was level, the dispassionate tone of a surgeon describing an incision. Exhibit A. Let's start with travel and entertainment. I used a laser pointer, the red dot hovering over a line item. $38,000 for 2 first-class non-refundable tickets to Monaco, booked the day after my wife left me. You categorize this as European investor relations, an interesting name for a romantic getaway. Amelia flinched as if I'd struck her. David sputtered, That's a legitimate business expense. We're expanding." "Are you?" I clicked to the next slide, a picture of the Porsche Taycan, a 2-year, 6-figure lease on this vehicle, categorized as a company car for client transportation. Yet, according to the GPS logs, its primary destinations are your downtown condo, a handful of expensive restaurants, and a weekend home in Napa. Not a single venture capital office on the list. The 2 other board members were sinking lower in their chairs, avoiding eye contact with David. I clicked again. The charge from the luxury jeweler. $8,000. Corporate gifting. David, my firm requires receipts for all gifts over $500. There's no receipt here. But I'm sure Amelia could tell us what it was. It looks lovely on her, by the way. Amelia's eyes shut tight. A single tear escaped and traced a path down her pale cheek. The upgrade. The empire. It was all laid bare as a pathetic, grimy theft. The man she'd lauded as a visionary was just a common con artist who'd been caught with his hand in the till. "This is a misunderstanding," David stammered, his voice cracking. "A clerical error. I can explain everything." "No," I said, my voice like ice. "You can't. This isn't an error. It's fraud." I looked at Marcus. "Marcus, please remind Mr. Chen of Section 7, Paragraph B of his funding agreement." Marcus spoke, his tone grim and final. "The bad actor clause. It states that any evidence of gross negligence, fraud, or misuse of company funds for personal gain constitutes a material breach. Such a breach results in the immediate termination of your position and a forfeiture of all vested and unvested equity." The words hit David like a physical blow. He staggered back a step. "You can't do that. This company is me." "This company," I corrected, my voice cutting through his panic, "was an investment, a poorly performing asset that I am now liquidating." I closed my laptop. The projector screen went black, plunging the room into a stark, unforgiving light. I stood up, walking around the table until I was standing directly in front of him. "You're fired, David. Security will escort you out. Your corporate accounts are frozen, and my legal team will be in touch regarding a full clawback of all misappropriated funds. You're not a visionary. You're a liability I'm writing off." I finally turned my gaze to Amelia. The woman I had loved for 15 years stood shattered, a ghost in the ruins of the kingdom she thought she'd conquered. Her eyes pleaded with me, searching for a flicker of the man she once knew. She found nothing. No flicker of the man she once knew. Just the cold, hard surface of the investor she had fatally misjudged. "Ethan, please," she whispered, the name a foreign object in her mouth. Her hand reached out, a futile gesture, then fell limply to her side. I looked past her, at David, who was now being flanked by 2 imposing security guards Marcus had summoned with a discreet text. "This is insane. You can't do this." David blustered, his voice thin and reedy. The guards, impassive and efficient, guided him firmly toward the door. He wasn't a king. He was just a man being evicted. His rocket ship had disintegrated on the launch pad. I turned my gaze back to Amelia. Her entire body trembled. The facade of the powerful VP had crumbled, leaving behind the woman who had thrown away 15 years on a spectacular lie. "You called my work abstract," I said, my voice low and devoid of heat. "You said I just move money around. This is what that looks like, Amelia. It's the correction of a bad investment, a market recalibration." "I didn't know," she choked out, the words barely audible. "That was your mistake," I said, delivering the final, clinical assessment. "You wanted an upgrade, but you didn't do your due diligence. You bet on the visionary, not the vision, and you forgot to check who owned the bank." I picked up my satchel from the table, the click of the latches echoing in the tomb-like silence. I gave a final nod to Marcus, who was already on his phone, executing my orders. "Begin the dissolution process, full forensic audit, and change the locks on this entire floor by noon." Marcus simply replied, "Consider it done." I walked toward the door, not looking back at her. I didn't need to. I could feel her stare burning into my back, the weight of her ruin. As I passed her glass-walled office, I saw the silver frame on her desk. The smiling photo of her and David was now a cruel monument to her own demolition. Her new life, her new name, Amelia Sterling, all foreclosed upon in less than 10 minutes. There was no joy in it, no savage thrill of victory, just the stark, quiet satisfaction of a balance sheet being reconciled. The books were finally balanced. My investment was protected. The world, finally, was back in order. So here's the question for all of you. If you were in my shoes, would you pull the funding and get your revenge, or would you stay silent and essentially become your ex-wife's new boss?